All right, so it's been a little while since this. I've been traveling for work a lot and I'm having some microphone issues, obviously. So trying to figure out how to get my headset working again. Make this a quick video, at least so I post something because it's been a couple days. Not a lot of updates here at the top. I think the storyline's okay. Obviously, there's probably some slides and the words I'm trying to say I could maybe improve. With the first couple parts here, we go, okay, comparing horses to cars, to fiat, to Bitcoin, to what I think is the alignment economy, and some of the differences between here and how we need to work as a community to do a better job of bringing people down this buyer's journey and realizing it's not going to take 2 years. This is a 10, 20-year thing we're working on here. And we are very much back here right now for the monetary one, where a lot of people don't actually feel it's broken fully yet, enough to switch to something differently, right? But I think this is starting to shift in that the, if I can spell, economy is bad, with blue collar jobs being shipped overseas. White collar is going to continue to feel the effects of, overseas personnel speaking English doing it, AI doing your work, robots doing even fulfillment stuff here in the US. Some of the newer updates I put in at the wrong screen. Display sweating, swap presenter. There we go. Um, and this is a newer slide that I cleaned up a little bit from the other day, but trying to tie back. Okay, so if you're someone who doesn't really believe, if you're stuck up here where you don't really think the monetary system is broken yet, what can we do to help you think through that, right? And so, obviously, people think about, okay, manufacturing got shipped overseas. There's all this new stuff coming, but the getting more and more people to see that like the purchasing power of the dollar has collapsed over the last 100 years. That's continuing to collapse. I think it was even this week they talked about essentially starting QE again. The printer's going to go, and so that's going to create a lot of problems. And there's some cool videos out there, especially this one. I'll have to put a link here eventually of kind of showing like essentially all the world's problems come from this. There's a couple stretches in here, but it's actually pretty logical if you listen to the full thing. And so what we're trying to say is that fiat is struggling because one group controls it. They can create more whenever they want. The rules can change anytime. You can't verify or stop it, and so it buys less over time. And we need to try to remind people that money has changed many times over the centuries, right? So if you think about there was the Spanish pieces of eight for about 300 years. We had the Dutch Gilder glider, I forget, 200 years. The pound was, two, 300 years or so. And the dollar, we've got it going still here. And so how long is it going to last? But even within the dollar, so the current dollar is from 1945, right? But there was lots of dollars before that in the United States. And so people forget that, being a colonist or part of early America, like we were constantly flipping between currencies. And so even in 1971, and there's a lot of, what the hell happened in 1971 kind of stuff where we got off the gold standard. And so Ray Dalio's got some pretty good videos about this. And so again, want to try to figure out how to bring people down this buyer's journey a little bit better. And then I think part of what it comes down to is that no one really wants to have a tea party, and that's part of what it takes. There's a certain group of people, the early Bitcoin adopters, a lot of people in crypto today, they see all this up here and they're willing to do the tea party, but there's a much smaller percentage of the US population or the global population that's willing to do that, right? And so I think that people say, okay, look, I've got bills to pay, I've got a family to feed. I don't really have any ideas how to fix this, so I'm just going to keep going along with it. But there needs to be some sort of way that we can try to figure out how to get people looking at this from a different direction and really trying to find a way to reshift our economy to get our smartest minds doing things besides, I should write this out, high frequency trading or like, maximizing clicks on site. Like we have a lot of other bigger problems that we're trying to solve. And I think that you could argue back in 2008, 2012, like people noticed this. They realized that banking and Wall Street were kind of the problems with Occupy Wall Street. But there's kind of the joke that that's also the same time that all this identity politics and woke stuff kicked off. And so they kind of shifted people's attention from the real problem towards something that is kind of ridiculous, right? And so Bitcoin has shown an alternative, and what we're trying to show here is that once we get people say, "Yep, okay, great, there's problems with it. I'm willing to try something." We need to get them to see that okay, Bitcoin's useful, but it's maybe not the full answer. And I think there's a lot of people that don't really understand blockchain, and so trying to say, okay, like blockchain is kind of like a notebook, like everyone has a copy of it, and when something new is written, everyone writes it, they check, they agree before it's added. And once it's in, nobody can change it or erase it, right? And so we've got all these kind of complex ways of describing blockchain, but we need to talk to people like they're five, right? That's how people understand things. Clear, simple analogies and stories. And so we're taking those problems that fiat had and blockchain solving a lot of them. But what I'm saying is that there's a couple key issues that are still in the way. that Bitcoin hasn't solved or has run into. And the first is first mover advantage. Like we talked about, that if you got involved early, you're doing pretty well, and maybe you held on, maybe you didn't. um, but people that are going to come 10, 20, 30 years from now are not going to be into this very much, right? And they're just going to take whatever the global government says for them to use, which very well could just be a Bitcoin backed to dollar or something to that effect. And then the challenge with any new cryptocurrency that started has a first mover advantage. Like there's very few, in my opinion, that have solved this problem. The next one is with deflation is the most common one, and like Bitcoin's case, where you could spend 10,000 Bitcoins on a pizza a long time ago. Some of us that have been involved in the space for a while have done things like this, and I think at some point, probably 2017 to 2022, people realized I should just never sell, never spend, right? And that was not what the whole thing was made for. The whole thing was made for transactions and things to use, but deflation's causing a huge challenge like this. So it's becoming more like gold, hence the comment earlier about maybe a dollar backed by Bitcoin. And so we need to try to figure out how to create a day-to-day currency that can be used. And a lot of this comes down to the story wars, in that the challenges that are being added to Bitcoin and that are preventing its story from being so well is the first mover advantage and the massive deflation. The average Joe's looking at this and saying, "Nope, I don't agree with your story. It doesn't make sense. I'm gonna stick with the dollar," right? And so, how can we come up with a new idea? I'm looking at what I call the alignment economy, and that it kind of finishes the job of what Bitcoin started. It's a spendable, stable peer-to-peer electronic cash. And what I'm trying to do here is solve those two problems, where we have all the stuff we had from blockchain that solves the fiat problem, but also how can we solve those two Bitcoin or other crypto problems of first mover advantage and deflation. And so how I've tried to solve deflation slash inflation is by rebalancing. And we'll talk more about that here in a second. And then for the first mover advantage, doing daily airdrops is a way to help, make sure that there's a kind of like a universal basic income that, yes, there is first mover advantage, but it won't be as substantial as you see in most other systems. So as I made on one of my videos the other day, I'm not sure everyone's seen this, but it's an interesting TED talk from a long time ago about how to start a movement. I'm this crazy guy dancing by himself right now. I'm trying to find some more people that are willing to jump in and dance with me and create a movement here. And I'm going to pause here because I've presented this in a couple other videos and it goes on for a while, but I'll click through the slides if you want to take a look. Just kind of how I think there's kind of building up from first principles and then the different types of points, the amount that gets airdropped each day, and trying to show that there's I got to work on my wording here, but different ways to give people value that they can then spend. And they're able to tag this manually. We'll be able to use AI in the long run. There's a percent human score it gets multiplied by. There's different types of percent human. And essentially what we're doing is saying, okay, you grant a price, we multiply that by percent human. That gives us the points. We can only save points that are earned. The rest have to be spent each day or they get lost. And then this daily rebalancing or rebasing formula essentially resets it every single day so that you have the same purchasing power, but not the same number of points. And that will help prevent inflation, deflation, and create more stable pricing within the currency. So, as I've talked about before, I think there's obviously a lot of gaps here in what I'm working on. I think I've got a pretty solid story or pretty solid solution. I need to work on my story. So, trying to find a team, people to help confirm my math that I've got. Let's actually get this coded, figure out how to tell this story a little bit better, and then let's try to get this out. There's a lot more people in the world that I think would be interested in this if we can find some others that are willing to help dance with me in this crazy movement. So thank you for the time, and more to come.